Tatum, and welcome to my video on Orange Belt Self-Defense Techniques. Now, if you've done your homework and you studied my previous videos and you've learned the basics well, you should be ready for these techniques. Now, this is going to be a step up from Yellow Belt. If you remember in the Yellow Belt video, we did 10 techniques. Now, we got 24 we have to learn. Now, the basics really apply here. We have 24 techniques for 24 attacks. Now, the attacks are going to range anywhere from pushes to punch to grabs to chokes, locks and holds and kicks. So there's a little bit of work for us to do. So I want you to get ready, go get your gi on, I'll meet you back here and we'll start in just a moment. Welcome back. I hope you're ready, so let's get started. Now, the first technique I'm going to teach you today is called clutching feathers. Now, clutching feathers is a unique technique now. It's going to teach more than just hitting your opponent just to hit him or to injure him. You're going to find out in this technique that the injury you cause to your opponent is going to be a very sophisticated move because it's going to cause certain things to happen in your opponent. Now, with the help of Rick, hi Rick, I did. Clutching feathers. When we speak of feathers, we refer to the hair in the Kimpo vocabulary. Now, as Rick grabs me, okay, why he's grabbing me could be for many reasons. He could be pulling my head down because he's going to cross punch me with the right hand, or he could be pulling me into a knee, or whatever. But what I've got to do, I've got to get rid of that grab, and I've got to do it in a way that I'm not hit in the process, and I don't lose my hair. So as I make my first move, what I've got to do is create distance from me in that punch. So I'm going to pin Rick's hand because I want to isolate that grab. I want to regain control. And normally in the Kimpo system, when we pin a hand, it's because we want to gain control back again. So I pin the hand, I step back away from that hand. It also puts weight on Rick's left leg. Okay, now that's an angle of disturbance. We put weight up there, so at that point we're canceling his height. He can't kick when there's weight on that leg. Now, the width is canceled on Rick, as you learned in my previous tape, because of me pulling. All right, at this point now, I'm going to strike a nerve just right under his armpit into the lymph nodes there. Now, the nerve is going to be struck with a middle knuckle. A regular fist, if he squeezes my hair, hold on tight, Rick, is not going to transfer into those nerves. But a middle knuckle, or what we used to call the dragon's head, will reach it. Now, this, I'm pinning as I step back. And as I plant, bam, I go right to the nerve, okay? That nerve's gonna send a signal right up the arm to let go of the hair, okay? And it's gonna further get Rick away and off of me. Okay, now, in this technique, as I strike, I simultaneously, at that point, rake down his arm, pivot to a right forward bow, and do a left heel palm, thrusting heel palm to the bridge of his nose or this chin, depending upon the position of Rick's head as I do this. Okay, now watch this again. Feet together, Rick. He steps in and grabs my hair. I step back to get away from getting hit, put some weight on his leg, make my first strike. If he follows up, if he starts to come after me, then this is supported by my stance change into a forward bow. This is all I want you to do for the orange belt level. It's not hard, it's a little sophisticated, but don't forget, as you pin, the head moves back with the leg. So the body works as one unit. I don't want to see this. I don't want you to pin, keep the head here, and then pull back. You'll get hit before you get done. Now the pin and a step, as he starts to punch, everything works together all at once. Everything happens together. And like I said, basically this is a follow-up. If Rick tries to re-grab or come in with a punch, then we have the follow-up at this point. Thank you, Rick. Good. The next technique is called triggered salute. Now, you're going to find this fascinating technique. Now, this is designed against somebody pushing you. Now, in this technique, you're going to take the angle of least resistance. Now, when I say least resistance, I don't want that to be misleading. All right, now I'll show you what I'm talking about. Clyde, can I borrow you for a second? Thank you. Now, this is a push from his right arm to your left shoulder. Now, as Clyde pushes, natural reaction is to be shoved back this way. Now what we're going to do is we're going to train you that as he pushes to take an angle that will absorb this force, okay? Now, there's a number of ways you can do this. If he's pushing, I could step over, okay? Or I could step back, push with my left leg. And these are two angles of least resistance, okay? But the trouble with those is that they don't give me a target. Now, if I step in as he pushes, there's another angle, go ahead, push, Clyde, of least resistance, but it gives me a what? It gives me a target. Generally, there's 3 angles of least resistance in a technique, all right? But you've got to find the one that also gives you a target. It's not just enough to move away from him, okay? All right, so in our defense, remember in the other tapes, as I explained, is our offense. Now on this push, when Clyde does push, what we're going to do, we're going to check the hand, we're going to take back, and we're going to check his knee, and we're going to heel palm at the same time. So we have 3 things that are going to happen: the check, the knee, and the heel palm strike. And I want you to consider the knee down here as a strike as well. All right, now, as we move, I want you to think of this kind of like a gunslinger, a fast draw, in that when he pushes, bam, I move down from where my hand is, just like if I was drawing a pistol. And as I move in, bam, everything moves from here in one motion, okay? I'll slow it down just a little bit. What I don't want to see is this, because that's going to indicate that I'm coming. Clyde's going to see it, and he could block it or prepare for it, okay? But if you do this right, if the guy pushes, oh, he should not see this hit, nor should he see the knee check hit as well. Okay, now, as we move on this technique, we have 3 target points on a circle. 1, 2, 3. The hinge of the jaw or the chin, down to the bicep, to the solar plexus. That's going to be the first circle that we're going to work on. So that means we're going to do this slow. As Clyde pushes, we heel palm, bring him back in with the shape of the crane, slip it off, and hit the solar plexus with the elbow. Now I say the shape of the crane because I'm going to fasten my arm so it looks like a bird's head in his neck. And what that does, as we hit Clyde on the heel palm, it raises him up on his toes. Now that checks his height, it also checks his width. He can't punch or hit me, go ahead, punch. He can't kick because I've shoved weight suddenly up, so he's on his toes. But now I want to bring him back into range, so I come down hard onto the bicep, bringing him back down, again controlling his height. He can't kick at that point, and it brings him into my elbow. Now this in itself is also a strike, okay? Now what I mean is when Clyde is up here and I bring him back down, it's not just raking, but this part of your wrist actually hits and connects onto the bicep. Reason for that is because we want a dead arm, meaning we don't want him grabbing suddenly because he's been hit, go ahead, grab me, and pulling and yanking me around with that arm. So if I come off and deaden that arm, I don't have to worry about that as much. Also, it brings him back in for the elbow. The elbow comes back to the ribs, and then we're going to do an inverted punch to the chin at that point. That'll be the end of the technique. Now I want to show you something else. If he comes over here, from this angle, as I bring him in and I hit the solar plexus, I'm going to come back to the floating rib. I'm going to let my back knuckle slip and catch the kidney, okay? That's going to be icing on the cake. If you can do it, fine. All right, now watch again. He pushes, up, down, back, okay? The elbow hits the back knuckle, and then we drive him back up. All right, now the important thing on this technique is to remember, like I said before, shoot, that we move all at once. The knee check, the hand pin, and the heel palm all at one time. Don't stop the circle, round the corner. That's an elongated circle. That's important to remember because in Kempo we just don't stop and then start, but we round it, bringing him back in to the action. Okay, I'll do it one more time, a little slower. We go 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're done with your technique? Thank you, Clyde. Good. The next technique is dance to death. With the help of Rick, All right, now Rick's going to shoot a straight right punch, okay? Now I'm going to teach this for two attacks, one for a step-through right punch and the other one for a shuffle right punch. I'm going to do a step-through first. Now I'm going to start feet together. Rick's going to be in a left neutral bow. He's coming from 12 o'clock. As he punches, I'm going to step in and do a left inward block. Now this is part of that family grouping where we use sleeper and we also use thundering hammer. And if you remember, if you look at it from this angle over here, as he shoots the punch, my hand's already draped down and it's going to move from point of origin. Now depending upon where Rick's hand is again, if it's down low, then I can use thundering hammer, or I could go up to the sleeper like we learned before. But in this case, the hand's up, he has a check as he comes through with the punch. So I'm going to go to the third one, down to the groin area. Okay, now watch again. He shoots the punch, boom, make the block, boom, chop to the groin. Now this block turned into a check as I chop to the groin area. Okay, now I'm going to take you back to this angle over here so you can see the rest of the technique. He makes the punch, left inward block, left neutral bow, forward bow, chop to the groin. Now at this point, if you hit him hard enough, his hands are going to go down there. I want you to take your left leg, make an adjustment, and move around his lead leg, also cutting off the line of entry to your groin. At that point, you're going to step through and start a buckle. Now that's going to help Rick on his way down. As you begin to buckle, this elbow hits into the solar plexus or the ribs as you pull up his leg. It's a push-pull affair. This is what we're doing. It's what's taking our opponent down. Rick, come on up again. It's smooth and it's easy, and you'll find that the knee buckle helps this continuity. And I'll show what I mean. We block, chop him in the groin, knee, and take down all at once. Make sure you pull up and hold on the back of that ankle of Rick as you end up in a right neutral bow. Okay, Rick. Now, I'm going to show you another version of this, and we're going to do it from this angle over here. And he's going to do a shuffle right punch. Now, as he comes in, we're going to block it, chop to the groin. Nothing really changes except we don't have the knee buckle now. So we're going to step straight through, drive him and push him over. Okay, come on up, Rick. Now with the help of Crystal, thank you, Crystal. Now she's going to do the same technique, but as she takes Rick down, she's going to pull up sharply on his right leg. Okay, let's go ahead. Now, boy, right there, very nice. Now you notice that when she pulled up, she kept his rear end or his hip off the ground. Pull up a little more for me, Crystal. That's important because we're taking a pivot point away from Rick. If she puts his hip back down, go ahead, start to maneuver. Rick can maneuver around and twist and turn, but if she pulls up sharply at that point, he loses that ability. Okay, now come on back up. Let's try this again. Now I'm going to set it up. I'm going to take your place for a second, Rick. Crystal, are you ready? Move up just a little bit. You can play with this in a little different scenario. I'm going to be more of a boxer, and Crystal is already going to be set up more in a neutral stance, like a Kempoist. Okay, Crystal, you're in here. Now what I'm going to do with this technique is I'm going to jab as a feint, or to get her attention up here. Then I'm going to shuffle with a right cross. And this is where this technique really comes into play. And what I mean is that if he's so aware of himself up here, but he's not conscious from the waist down, Crystal's going to take advantage of that. So as I jab here, she doesn't go for the jab, but she goes for the right cross and goes underneath and catches in the groin area. Good. Rick, you want to do that for me? So Rick plays more of the boxer. He jabs, but then he shuffles in or steps in with the right cross. Go ahead, all the way through. Good. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Rick. Good. Think about this, okay? Now, it's written, we have it taught as a step-through right punch, but I want you to practice it as a shuffle, okay? You can see the value behind it. Great. Is called gift of destruction. All right, now, usually when you talk about fighting and defending yourself, you don't think of a gift. This is a defense against a handshake. Now, what do we say about a handshake? Well, why would I want to defend myself against a handshake? It's very important because You know, like they say, sometimes in a handshake lies a snake. Masood, can you help me over here? All right, with the help of Masood, now, you know, people will do funny things when they're shaking hands, meaning that if I walk up to somebody off the street and I don't know them and I say, hey, how you doing? The guy will instinctively, 9 times out of 10, shake hands with me. Now, I could pull him into my car. Okay, I could put him in an arm lock. I could do a number of things. I could put a knife into his ribs or whatever. All right. So what you got to do is understand that just because something's nice doesn't mean it's not harmful to you. I've had occasions where I've talked to people who have been at parties, or occasions where people are drinking or whatever, and a guy's shaking hands and they get a little macho. One guy tries to squeeze the finger of the other guy and tries to break it, you know, show how strong he is. Whatever the case is, I want you to know how to get away from it. What's dangerous about a handshake is the pull, meaning that he can pull you into a punch. And if it happens, he will inadvertently control your width, your height, and your depth just by pulling. Now, we learned in the other videos in freestyling how to control the depth zones of your opponent. Well, here it applies again. All right, now, get the destruction. Masood's grabbed my hand, he's squeezing my fingers, he won't let go of me. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to heel palm the outside of his right elbow, and I'm going to do a right knee to the groin. Okay, I want him hit twice. I want to make sure that this isn't going to be holding on to me. If I just knee him in the groin and he starts to fall, he may hold on to this and pull me down because he's still hurting. So I don't want that holding on to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heel palm here and at the same time pull his arm because I don't want to get hit. Particularly if I see that arm start to come my way, I'm going to pull it to control that width. I'm going to step to a zone of sanctuary and I'm going to control the width of his body. Now, as that happens, it exposes the elbow, okay? Now, as he punches, boom, I knee to the groin, I break the elbow, I check the arm, I come down on the inside of his right knee, which begins to do what? It begins to turn his head into my elbow. And that's the last shot of it. Now, watch it over here at this angle. His left arm starts to come. I knee to the groin, I control his width, I check that arm, and here's where I come down on that knee. Watch his head start to turn into the elbow. Keep that arm checked, and as you come down, hit to the hinge of the jaw of the elbow, and you're out. That's how it's done. It's simple, but you've got to understand to control that side of his body. Also, when you pull down on the arm, it puts weight on his legs, so you're controlling his height at that point, too. Thank you, Masood. The next technique is locking horns. Now, this is a good technique. Now, like chokes and holds, or any technique that you're dealing with somebody's arm wrapped around your neck, you've got to keep your breathing constant. If you don't, you can't finish the technique. Now, particularly on this technique, now with the help of Clyde, thank you, Clyde. It's going to get me in a front headlock, okay? Now, what I want to do is turn my chin away from his inside of his arm and tuck it in so he can't cut off my wind supply. I don't want that arm up there cutting it off because I won't be able to do this technique, all right? Now, as he puts some pressure on, I'm going to step in with my head turned in. I'm going to raise his arm up so you can see me. And I'm going to be in a right closed kneel stance because I need a brace to go up against his weight as he's leaning on me, okay? Now, I want my left hand to check the inside of that leg. As this hand hits the groin with a reverse hand sword, that becomes a check to that knee. If he tries to knee me with the left, that won't come through. If the right tries to hit, I'm checking down there. All right, it's important. If you don't, a common thing for a headlock is for somebody to get you in and use his knees on you. So what we want to do is we want to check those lines of entries. We don't want those knees coming up into our face. Okay, now as he puts me back in the headlock, put some pressure on me, and he bends me down, boom, I hit the groin. All right, now from that point, I want you to turn to a neutral bow. I want you to rip the groin here. I want you to contour his body, and I want you to do an obscure elbow, bringing Clyde up. Now, the last move is to shuffle in and sandwich the jaw. I want you to guarantee that that jaw is going to be in line. So as I bring Clyde up, I'm going to bring him back down with a heel palm here, bam, and then bring the elbow across the jaw at that point. Okay, let's take it from the beginning. Now watch again. He grabs, puts some pressure, whack, I hit, grab, rip, make sure that this hand hits, come across with the elbow. Okay, let's move Clyde over. We're going to change the angle. That way you can see what we're doing over here. Okay, grab me, Clyde. He applies the pressure, I move in and check. Hit the groin, the hands will spring out. He'll protect himself. Generally the hands will go down here. He may even grab my hand. And that's why we put a claw here to keep that from happening. All right, now as we hit the jaw, bring him back in. Bring this hand around so it hinges here and acts as a what? Backing board for the elbow. This was here, now it comes up from this point and hits him here. Thanks, Clyde. Good. The next technique is called lone kimono. Now, this is kind of a famous technique in the Kempo system, and it was probably the first technique that I learned back when I was a kid. Now, what's unique about this is that it really shows the side of Kempo that's very pragmatic. Okay, now with the help of Rick. Okay, now if I'm being grabbed, most guys grab for two reasons. Number one, they want to grab to pull you into a punch, okay, jerk you around, okay. Some people grab because, in essence, they're really afraid and they're going to try and hopefully frighten you, okay, shake you up a little bit by grabbing. But I don't want to try and second guess that. If somebody's grabbing me, I'm not so worried about the grab as much as I am worried about the hand that's not grabbing me or the leg that's down there. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin Rick's hand, and like I always say, when you pin, you take back control, or at least a piece of it. And I'm going to step back into a right neutral bow. Now at this point, I'm pulling weight on Rick's leg, all right, and I'm controlling his width, his height and his width, and his depth. He can't run away, he can't run into me, okay, and he can't kick me. Now that's the first move. Generally when guys grab like this, so they grab and they twist and try to pull you into an action. So as he grabs and twists, I borrow that twist. Since he's twisting this way, we're going to borrow that force and we're going to use it to our advantage. It's going to take his elbow and it's going to rotate it, and you'll look at it from this angle. As he grabs and twists, he puts his elbow exactly where I know it's going to be. And that's how I'm going to break it. I can't break it with the arm bent because I'll probably hurt my own arm because that's a fixed point there. So what I have to do is step back, elongate that arm, the elbow's underneath, and yes, now I can break it. All right, so from here, he twists his own arm up, getting ready to punch. I pin, drop back to my neutral, do an upward block against his what? His elbow, and at the same time, I push down, snapping that arm. Boom. They both work together. In my defense, stepping back is also my offense. Now, if you look at it from this angle, he grabs me, twists it up, I go with it, snap that arm. Okay, now, if I need a secondary break, I got one from this angle. All right? Everything's a follow-up in Kempo. It's icing on the cake. If we need it, if he starts to come back again, I rake the arm, and if I do it hard enough, it's going to cancel the width so I don't have to deal with that punch. Now, if you look again, my intentions are I want to snap his elbow. Hopefully that's enough. He would let go, fall, out of pain, whatever. If I see that arm start to come, I rake this one. And then from this point, chop him in the throat. Everything's a follow-up, okay? It's not that we're trying to overkill as much as we're trying to teach you to be overskilled in case something else happens. 1, 2, and 3, right in the throat. Keep the left hand up as a check. Sometimes I put it down when I'm talking, but I want you to keep it up as a check. Thank you, Rick. Good. The next technique is called glancing salute. Now this is for another push, but the difference is now the push is not directly across, but it's a cross push with his right hand to my right shoulder. Masood, with the help of you. Now we're going to take the angle of least resistance again, all right? As he pushes, I can go straight back, which is an angle of least resistance, but I have no target at that point. Nothing's happening. It could be used. I mean, I could get pushed this way and then decide to kick, but that goes against our vocabulary, meaning that if he pushes and then I do something, okay, we don't do that. What happens is we're going to take an angle of least resistance that gives us an immediate target. Now it's going to be this elbow. But this elbow won't break on its own unless I have a fulcrum behind it. So angle of least resistance gives us the target. Bam! This pins, this breaks. And it's no more than a left inward block, and you pivot from 10 o'clock. See, I stepped to 10, and then I pivoted towards you, which would be 3 o'clock at this point, into a right forward bow. If you do it hard enough, you'll come right up on his toes, and the next target will be the hinge of his jaw. It's in line with his hand. This arm's in the way, though, okay? If I start to move it this way, this will probably fly in my face. So what I do is I pin, I break, check the arm down. That puts weight on his feet, keeps him from kicking me. And you notice that the head started to move in at that point. Okay, now let's watch again. He pushes, bam, break. Now as the head comes down, I'm going to heel palm right on the hinge of the jaw. That hand checks, this one hits. At that point, the hand hits and then wraps around and grabs the neck. This hand's still checking. It's a wraparound strike, meaning it hits, ricochets off, and keeps going. It contours the neck. Then we're going to come through with a knee to the ribs or the solar plexus as this bottom hand checks. As that hits, we're going to contour the head and slip the elbow in. And that's no more than a right inward elbow, the left hand checking. Okay, watch me again. The guy moves, break, heel palm, bam, and knee, and elbow, all in one. Okay, thank you much. The next technique is called 5 swords. Now 5 swords, again, is another famous technique in Kempo. In fact, if you ask somebody what's their favorite technique, it's either lone kimono or 5 swords, probably 5 swords. Originally, this was designed to use all the hand swords in the technique. What I mean by that is, with the help of Clyde, this was designed against a roundhouse punch. A guy jumps out of his car, comes flying out at you, and widely throws himself open. Okay, Clyde, would you give me a back up a little bit? Okay, shoot your punch. Now, here's the punch we're dealing with. It's going to the side of our head. Now, we're going to step in at 11 o'clock. He's coming from 12, but we're going to go to 11, so we want to try to isolate that leg and cancel it and put a knee check in. At the same time, the first sword is going to hit the bicep. Okay, I don't want this just to be a block now, but I want it to be a weapon. I want you to damage that arm. The other hand is going to be an extended outward block or a left outward check, and they're both going to hit together. Now we could call this the first hand sword, the next one another hand sword. The other one's a heel palm, which is most commonly used. Now we do that in a school so that we don't poke each other in the eye, but out in the street it goes hand sword, okay, a hand sword or a spear hand, but it's still part of the sword, okay? And then the third or fourth one would be to the solar plexus. As you pivot out of your forward bow into your neutral, you'd go to the solar plexus like this. Now most students are not going to take the time to develop their fingers to hit somebody hard enough without breaking their fingers. Okay, that's a whole nother art in itself. So we supplement the eye poke with a heel palm, the uppercut, or with a vertical hand sword with a right uppercut. Okay, then we move on, and I'll show you where we're going to go from there. But it gives you an idea where the name of the technique came from. All right, first move, the punch comes. All right, bam, we paralyze the arm, go to the side of the neck. That's the second hand sword. Also, you notice when I came in, I really went after that knee. Immediately, I dropped into the knee as I blocked, okay? So it's multi-dimensional striking, here and here and here. I use this as a strike. I don't just check. That as he swings, boom, I hit, up. Then I go to the heel palm, up, bend him over now. Then I go to a right forward bow, and this is a short chop. And you notice I'm tracking down my arm here. As I hit the left side of his neck, I start to bring him around into position. As this right arm circles, it drops in and makes the final chop at this point. From here, bam, down the side of the back of the neck. Okay, watch from this angle. Punch comes, heel palm, up, uppercut, down. Then I dropped in for the last shot. And you'll notice here, the bottom hand checks. Now what I'm doing so I don't hurt Clyde is I'm hitting my own arm. It's called a point of contact. It's a good way to practice too. Or pick not the neck, pick the shoulder blade. Some places to make a little contact without hurting each other. Great, thank you, Clyde. technique is called scraping hoof. Now, scraping hoof is, this is taught in the Kimpel system, and I teach it in 3 phases. The guy is attempting to put you in a full Nelson attack. The further on down the road, you learn a technique called repeated devastation, where he actually gets you into the headlock, okay? And the third one, further on down from that, is where he gets you in a headlock but bends you forward, all right? Now, I'm going to teach it to you this way today, but I'm going to give you an alternative so that you can do it 1 or 2 ways. Okay, now with the help of Rick, full Nelson, it's a headlock from back, from behind. The dangers of it is, if he starts to push forward, he's controlling my height because he's putting weight on my legs. He's controlled my width if he locks his arms in. It's hard for me to maneuver from there. Now, what's dangerous about any type of headlock or hold is that once it's applied with full force, it's the same as getting hit. There's a good chance you won't get out of it. You've got to remember that. Your techniques in Kimpel should be applied as it's happening, not after the fact. Too often I've heard people say, well, I got this guy in a choke hold full force and I can press 400 pounds bench press and the guy couldn't get out of it. Well, of course not. That's like saying I punched the guy in the mouth and he didn't block it, okay? You apply these techniques as they're happening. Don't wait till it's done, okay? That's where you get in trouble. That's why there's 3 phases to this technique, to this attack. Okay, now with the help of Rick, what he's trying to do is putting me in that lock. Now go ahead, Rick. Hard, Rick. Now, if I just leave my arms down, that in itself will prevent him from locking his fingers, okay? Just by keeping the arms down. But I want to do a little more in that. And what most people do when they get you in this type of lock or choke or hold is they like to get their face right in there, okay? And we're going to take advantage of that. Now, at this angle, as Rick starts to grab, I'm going to arch my back suddenly and shove my arms down to keep his arms from going in and locking, all right? Okay, he makes the attempt. I arch my back and I butt with my head. Now, it's close enough that the back of my head can break the bridge of his nose without injuring me, because the head's not traveling real far. It's hitting a soft target. It may hit his cheekbone. Hopefully it hits the bridge of the nose. But it becomes the first strike. He makes the attack. Go ahead, Rick. Bam! I butt with my head. Now I turn to what's called a rear bow, not a reverse bow. And this is seldom used in the Kimpel system. A rear bow is when you transfer your weight to the other leg. In this case, it's my left leg, and it looks like a reverse bow. A reverse bow would look like this, but it's a little different. And you bend your right knee. It's only transitional. You don't stay there. What this does, it aligns me up to the next target, which is going to be a right heel kick to the inside of his knee. And I guarantee you do this hard enough, you're going to break his leg. For this, I'm going to use the flat of my foot so I don't hurt him permanently, okay? Now, again, the attack is made. I butt with my head. I turn to a rear bow. Don't let that arm travel. Gather it up. Make your first kick. Okay, it's going to go the inside of his leg. So I'm going to use the edge of my foot to go the inside of his right knee, okay? All right, now, grab again. 1, check those arms. 2, 3, scrape down and stop the foot. Go to a left rear bow and begin the same process on the other side of the leg. And that's all there is to the technique. Now, the idea about these kicks is when you do them, you don't raise up, okay? That cancels your power. Doesn't help it, it cancels it. If you play pinball machine, you'll realize that the ball bounces back and forth. It ricochets. Likewise here, the inside of Rick's legs at this point, as I'm kicking, they ricochet back and forth. Now, the way I do that is I drop my height and I begin my kick this way. It's almost like I'm doing a spinning back kick at this point, all right? The difference is something's in the way when I'm moving. And again, I do the same thing on the other side and I'm out. All right, so when an attack is made, boom, all at once. Good, and that's the way it should be. Rick should get hit in the nose and on the leg almost simultaneously. When a guy gets hit that frequently, that fast, that many moves in a short span of time, the brain short circuits. It can't comprehend what's going on. The last thing somebody wants to do is hold on. They don't even know where they are when they're getting hit that fast and that many moves. Thank you, Rick. called grip of death. Now this is another headlock. This is a flank or side headlock. Now, we're going to use borrowed force, meaning that as he gets me in a headlock or makes the attempt to do it, I'm not going to fight him for it, but I'm going to go with the action. And he's going to create a circle, and I'll show you what I mean with the help of Clyde. Now, as Clyde grabs me in a headlock, he's going to grab his own wrist because he's going to use that as leverage. Now, I want you to think of where I'm pointing as 12 o'clock. All right, now as he starts to pull and twist, that's the circle that I'm talking about. Now, the angle of greatest resistance would be to fight Clyde for it if he's pulling that direction, is to pull back, because I'll end up probably breaking my neck or it's going to be a struggle. The easiest thing to do for me to find a target as he pulls is to go with it and let my bottom leg break his ankle or dislocate his knee. Now that's called a right closed kneel, and he's pulling it on himself. The harder he pulls, Clyde, come on up again, we'll do it slow. The more he pulls and jerks, the worse this gets. Now I also want you to take your chin and tuck it into your left side. Now you notice that this move makes this arm spring away from it, okay? So this move then checks his what? His width, right? So as he pulls, that's checking his width. Now even if I didn't use my hands, this in itself is a great technique, okay? But we're gonna add on. If this slips off or he starts coming back with that arm, then we're gonna follow up. Okay, now let's take it again. He comes in, gets me in a headlock, starts to pull. As I'm buckling or breaking the leg, I'm also hitting the kidney back here with the left inward hammer fist and the groin at the same time. It's going to bring his head down a little bit. I'm going to contour his back, and I'm going to go underneath the nose. I'm going to use my index finger with the middle finger as backup mass behind it. Now I anchor down, and I pull my left elbow straight down and anchoring back down. I contour along his chest, and I come right up into a left forward bow and a right straight heel palm thrust. Right at this point, getting him off of me, he may dump or he may go up. When we do the ending of this technique, we're going to keep him up, and I'll show you why later. Now watch it from this angle over here. I'll bring you around so you can see the back. As he starts to pull, you can see my leg back there catch on the outside of the knee. Here's the kidney shot and the groin shot. Here's underneath the nose. And you notice when I say anchor, I want you to anchor your elbow straight down. The more pressure that I apply with my elbow anchoring, that same pressure is applied with the knee. I'm canceling his height, width, and depth. Try and fight back for me. Go ahead, fight. There's not much the guy can do. He's wide open for the last move. Okay? Let's do it from this side again. If he jumps up and jerks me into it, you're gonna feel the pull. And I want you to step. Remember that's 12? I want you to step to 10. And that's approximately where you are. As he starts to go, that's what does it. Up and down. Thank you, Clyde. Good. Okay, the next technique is called crossing talon. All right, with the help of Brian, thank you. It's a wrist grab. Okay, now, ordinarily, if somebody grabs your wrist, there's no need to go into any configuration that's unnecessary. I mean, it'd be just as easy to check the hand and possibly kicking. But it's what he's doing with my wrist that compels me to go into the technique. Now, if he's pulling me this way, I'm not going to use crossing talon. If he starts to pull me this way, I may use it, but then I just may slip out against the thumb for that matter. All right, if I am just standing in position and I feel somebody pulling me and I'm not aware of it, then I'm going to pull back suddenly. The reason is I don't want the left to hit me, okay? If I do nothing in this technique, I don't want that left arm to hit me or his leg to kick me. And I could be at a party, I could be talking to somebody, and my hand's down and he grabs my wrist. Now, before he pulls weight onto that leg and cancels my height, I suddenly pull here. At least I know that his height, width, and depth is momentarily what? It's canceled. All right. So how that happens depends upon the situation. We're going to take it as he grabs, I pull. I want to cancel the width because I don't want to get punched with the other hand. I don't want to get a knife into me or something like that. All right, now as he starts with his left, I pull, it cancels. Puts weight on that leg. It also exposes the outside of his arm. We're going to break the elbow at this point. We're going to counter grab here. It gets its name crossing talons because it looks like on his wrist and his hand, it looks like bird's talons grabbing my wrist there. Okay, so we're going to counter grab. all right? And as we do, we're going to step to 1 o'clock, all right? If I step to 1 o'clock, it supports my break against the arm because the lower part of my body is in sync and the weight is behind that break. Now, if I hold on, I'll be able to break and snap that elbow. Just as I get that break, I don't like this gap existing between me and him. I start to chamber my arm and pull him into the hinge of the jaw with an outward elbow at that point. Okay, now watch again. He grabs. I start to make my break. I pull him down, bam, into the elbow. Then I rip the face, but I don't want Brian to come up on his feet. I don't want to pull him up. Come on up, Brian, like this. So I take the back of my elbow and I anchor on top of his shoulder blade. What it does, two things. It increases my rip, giving me more leverage here. And it also controls Brian's height. That means as I'm ripping, it keeps him down while I'm causing the injury here. Bam, this way. Now I put enough pressure down, I circle around, and then I go for a major move because that was a minor. Major move came out of that circle and I do a left inward overhead elbow to the back of his spine, heel palm to the back of his neck from here, and that sets him up for a right knee to the face, and then I'm back. Okay, now watch again. And I'm going to take it from this angle. Come on over, Brian. So you can see what's going on behind Brian here. He's facing me from 12 o'clock. So I pull and counter grab and make my break, elbow, rip, set him up for the last move here, boom, hit, and knee. And that's how it should be done. Thank you, Brian. Good. The next technique is called shielding hammer. Now, when you learn this technique, I don't want you to be misled thinking that the shield, it is the block, but I'm very concerned here. A lot of people think, well, if I put a block up, I just have to shield myself, and there's more to it than that. That block has got to be supported, and that block should be as equal to a strike, okay? Now, I'll show you what I mean with the help of Clyde. Thank you, Clyde. Now, this is a counter for a hooking or a left roundhouse punch. We'll use it for a left roundhouse punch in here. Clyde has his guard up, okay? I'm feet together. He begins to shoot his move. I drop back to a right neutral bow. Now you see how his weight came forward because he is committed to the action. All right, now that's what I'm talking about. You've got to deal with that, and it's not enough just to shield yourself. That shield has got to become a strike. Now, shoot your punch. Okay, give me a stronger punch, okay? Now, as we move in, bam, this becomes the strike right here. Okay, that's actually a shield, but we call it a strike as well. Hook it around a little more, they can see it coming. Bam, that's the first move. The next thing that's going to come towards me is not just the fist, but his nose, because I'll tell you why. This is what people do when they punch like that. They wind up, then they wind up, and why they do, they dip the head in prior to the next punch. It's because of that we're going to take advantage of it. So we're going to go from the first move right there to the bridge of the nose. As he dips his head in, bam, we're going to bust the nose. Now that's going to turn him, and if he's still on his feet, his body's going to be at a 45-degree angle here. All right, when that body turns at a 45, we're going to fit the elbow. This is going to roll off his nose. The elbow is going to roll in. We're going to shuffle forward with a push drag into the solar plexus. The body is not going to be like this when you hit it. That's why when you dummy up for these techniques, you have to dummy up properly. Let's take the punch again. So we have 1, 2, 3. Okay, now I broke it up into steps. Now what's really happening is that as soon as this hits, you collapse that elbow, and the shuffle puts the power behind it. Now you can compare the elbow strike to a plane going off the deck of an aircraft carrier. It has its own power, but it's not enough to get off the deck. The deck's too short. So they have a catapult, where you can compare the catapult to your shuffle. All right? Let's do it again, slow. Here's the block. Left hand is up checking. I'm in a right neutral bow. I break the nose with a right inward hammer fist. I begin my shuffle. Now, for a beginning student, I like him to bring it back a little bit so he can feel the travel of that elbow strike. As you get more adept, you hit and just slip it. Boom! And two things can happen. Not only that, but you can get an eye rake as I just did, and an elbow at the same time. Good, thank you, Clyde. Good. The next technique is called thrusting salute. Now this is a counter for the inside of a right snap or thrust kick. Now it's important on this technique. This is going to teach something that will be important for you as understanding the strategy of Kempo. Now we have so many techniques to go through that I like to highlight in each technique something that will be maybe a little different from the previous technique. Now Brian, come on in Brian, is going to give me a step through snap kick. Now he's coming from 12 o'clock. We'll say wherever our opponent's coming from, it's 12 o'clock. Now what I want to do is I want to block the kick. Now it calls for a left downward block from a left neutral bow. All right, now as Brian kicks, I'm going to do a left downward block, but I'm going to step to between 4 and 5 o'clock. Now the reason for that is because between 4 and 10 o'clock, remember he came from 12, but at 10 o'clock is the target I'm going to next, which is the groin area, or it could be the solar plexus, it could be the sternum, the throat, the eyes. All these targets are lined up for me. You know what you might say, think about that, well, why is that so important? Well, the importance lies in a number of things. Let's build a little scenario. I'm out in the street, I'm in a parking lot, it's dark, it's not well lit. This guy jumps out of his car and he throws a kick at me. All right, if I step to 6 o'clock, I'm not aligned to the target, okay? If I can't see Brian's body, if I manage to block the kick, if I'm over here and if I can't see it, it's dark, I know what's between 4, where I stepped, and 10 o'clock. It's Brian. And in this case, it's Brian the groin area, so I'm going to take advantage of that, kick to the groin, boom, and bend his head down. Now I know that groin's going to be there because I blocked it a certain way and I stepped to a certain point on the circle. I moved up the circle, as we call it in Kempo. He came from 12, I moved over to 4. Now it's nice because from that angle, come on Brian, over here, it's close enough for me to maybe reach him with an eye hook, but it's going to be pretty hard for him to reach me because I'm on one of the furthest points of a circle. Okay, all right, let's take it again. Do a little faster. Bam, kick, bam, and then I heel palm, which is the follow-up. And it seems to be the natural course, sequential course at this time. When he came in, we'll do it a little slower. I blocked it, I brought his head down with the kick. When I did it, my hands are chambered, one is chambered, one is cocked. The right hand is chambered, the kick comes through, bends him forward, and possibly knocking him back. His head is in line with the heel palm, and I plant and apply it into a right neutral bow. It's a thrusting heel palm, gets its name, thrusting salute. Now, sequentially, Brian shoots his kick. Okay, the eye hook can be just before the kick, and then plant. It's there. Get a little more adapt, you can do it. Now let me show you from this angle. Come over here, Brian. We'll take that as 12 o'clock, so it'd be a good angle for you to see what's going on. Go ahead. I get over to 4 o'clock, line him up, bam, hand hit. I want the bottom hand as you plant the check. You're in a right neutral bow, it's a strong stance. This hand is checking. Thank you, Brian. Good. The next technique is called striking serpent's head. Now, striking serpent's head is a unique technique, and here you're going to learn something about circular motion, probably at its best. Now, what I mean by that is, you know, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and we know that, and a straight thrust punch or whatever is the quickest way to get to a target. But you don't always have, or you're not always in a position to get to a target in a straight line, and you're going to need a circular line to get to it, depending upon the situation. Clyde? Now in this attack, it's a front bear hug. The arms are free, rather. He's leaning in on me. He's trying to squeeze, break ribs, choke me, or lift me up or throw me down. What I have got to do is immediately drop my weight to control his height and to control my own. if I, hold on to me, Clyde, if I drop my weight, suddenly he's going to have to come down with me. I weigh too much for him to hold me up that suddenly. It doesn't mean he can't readjust and pick me up. For that moment, though, I'm not going to get lifted up and thrown around, okay? Now, the technique calls for a snaking punch or a left circular inverted punch as he comes in. Now, when guys grab and hug, get in, they bury their head and they start squeezing, and it's hard because they bury their face so that they can't get punched effectively. And you can try and rip and pull and all this, but if he's buried in there deep, it's hard. But by covering one target, they what? They expose another target. In this case, it's the back of the neck and the mastoid, the hard point behind your ear. Now, what's happening is I'm going to contour his back, and as he moves in, I'm going to drop back, and I'm going to come up his back this way and hit that mastoid, or use my wrist to hit the back of the neck. But they're both going to get hit simultaneously, and it's nothing but contouring, all right? The other thing I want to do is I don't want this going up higher, so I want to check this arm. So as I chamber and cock my hand, I want that elbow to come down right on the inside of the forearm or even the bicep and hit, but keep that arm away from you so that they're working together. And you know by now that there's more moves to this than what I'm just showing. And you can see the heel palm hit as I'm moving back. Now, as he moves in and drives me back, this hits. And as that hits, this hits here. Now you grab the hair, anchor your elbow, just like we did in a couple of other techniques, and you go to a left forward bow, and I'll show you why. My knee is pinned up against his. If I go to a forward bow, it starts to control his height again. Not only that, but with my elbow anchored down, and as I pull his head back to control his height, it exposes the target, and I'm going to use a forward bow and use a right half fist thrust to his throat at this point. That's what I'm doing. Okay, let's watch this again. All right, he grabs, I drop back, wham, boom. These two hit together. This grabs, forward bow, this anchors, and then half this to the throat. Bam, and then I'm out. Okay? Thank you, Clyde. Let's do it from this side so they can see what's going on from here. Grab. I drop back, heel, you can see that heel palm hit. There's the shot, there's the two anchors, one here and one here. It's important, they're in there, they should be used. Half this to the throat, and then I'm out. Thank you, Clyde. The next technique is called locked wing. Now, in this technique, I want you to remember that we don't wait for the arm to be locked behind the back, all right? We move on this technique as it's being applied to you, as the attack's being applied. Okay, with the help of Clyde? Now, if you look at me from this angle over here, you can see what's going on. Clyde is attempting to put my arm into an arm lock, all right? A number of things can happen. He can break my arm, he can dislocate my shoulder, he can control me, he can do whatever he wants with me. If I try to make the attempt at this point and he starts to push up on my arm, that's only going to make it worse. So I want you to realize that when you feel your arms start to go back, that's the time when I want you to move, okay? And we're going to step back with our left leg, and I want you to go to a left reverse bow. Now, if you look at it from this angle, if this is 12 o'clock where I'm looking, all right, we're going to step back to approximately 5 o'clock. That buckle is going to send his head right into what? As I pivot into a side horse, into a left outward elbow. Now, if he isn't off his feet at this point and the head starts to come back, it'll come back into the rip, all right, which is no more than an extension of the next strike from the elbow. Now, I'm going to go to a forward bow and break his arm against my back. My back becomes a big fulcrum, all right, with this arm pinned behind me at this point, and I'm holding on to it. As I rip the face, I'm going to come back and drop my weight, boom, snap that elbow joint right there. And I center myself as I do it. Now, I don't just stop there, but just as suddenly as the break is applied, boom, I step back to 4 o'clock with my right leg into a left forward bow, which whips his head down and into line for my right knee and a right heel palm strike to the back of the head. It's a sandwich effect as I knee to the head, and I plant back to my neutral stance. Now look at it from this angle over here. That's 12, I go to 5, as he starts to move, I elbow, rip, bust it, and step back. I continue to trap that arm, keep it locked in. This hand pins and strikes as I need. Okay? Now it's important, again, and I'll reiterate this, that as you feel this circle going, you go with it. It's not necessary to fight it. All right, as he moves, you start to move. If his leg's in the way, you go through it. It'll buckle it. And you notice that when I step back, I begin to descend and drop my height. That descension puts more leverage on this leg, allowing it strength to buckle what's back there. I grab the wrist, I begin to torque, and that elbow's going to hit, the hand's going to rip, arm's going to break, I lock it in. I'm in a left forward bow. You can do it in a neutral. I prefer the forward because it sets the knee in line to the head. Good, thank you. The next technique is called obscure wing. Okay, now in this technique, it's very simple and very fast. But now this technique teaches a little bit about reaction from your opponent, all right? And like I said, you know, as I go from technique to technique, I try to put something in and highlight something that we didn't before. With the help of Masood, all right. Now I'm gonna let him do the first part of the technique on me. We'll say this is 12 o'clock. I'm coming up from behind him. It's a rear shoulder grab, my left hand on his right shoulder. Now he's gonna step over, and he's going to go into a horse stance and drop his weight, and he's going to do a right back elbow. He's going to hammer fist to the groin, and then he's going to do a right obscure elbow. He's going to turn his body a little bit, contouring my chest and hit me in the throat or the jaw, and that'll be the technique. It's simple, it's effective, but I want you to understand something about it. When he steps over, he pins my hand, and he does the elbow. That's all at once, the step, the elbow, and the pin. Okay, if he didn't pin my hand, a number of things could happen. The reaction from getting hit in the solar plexus is this. All right, that in itself could be a finger in his eye. I chose his chin because I didn't want to hurt him. All right, but that's the reaction. You hit somebody like that, their arms just don't stand there. It hurts, he buckles forward, and the hand will probably go right in your face. In Kempo, you learn that you have to be prepared for the unexpected. What he is trying to do to you and what he doesn't try to do to you can still hurt you, all right, or kill you. Now in this situation again, now he's going to pin my hand and do the first move. My reaction is going to be stopped. This isn't going to go into his face. Then he can finish the next move and so forth, okay? Now if I take his place over here, he grabs, and it doesn't take a lot of grabbing, a lot of pressure. What you're stopping is this thing riding into your face. All right, now he can put a little tug on it as he pulls. He only increases the power of this, and then back up. You can let go of that point. Now, while I'm talking, I'm not turning my body, but what I want you to do is when you hit him on the last shot, I want you to turn a little bit to make sure it's not your best friend you're hitting, okay? All right, thank you, Masood. Good. The next technique is reversing mace. Now reversing mace, when you say mace in Kempo, you're talking generally about a fist. Now basically it's going to start in one direction and then it's going to reverse, and that's where it gets its name. Okay, with the help of Kevin, hi Kevin, he's going to start in a right neutral bow. I want you to start this in a right neutral bow, and he's coming from 12 o'clock. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move up the circle with our left foot so that we get a better angle of delivery for our strike and a better angle of opportunity all the way around. Now that means that if he comes through with a punch, go ahead Kevin, this is what I'm dealing with. If I stay straight there, it doesn't mean I can't do it, but I can't use the back knuckle as effectively as I could if I moved up the circle in this case. And that means as I block and I step up, now I can hit the ribs. Okay, now you can see it probably better from this angle here. Come on over here, shoot your punch again. I move up the circle. Here's the mace. It goes forward and then it suddenly reverses. It does an inward block, it reverses, and then you do a left outward block, and then what used to be an inward block is now an outward back knuckle. And that's where it gets its name, reversing mace. You have these two circles going this way. Again, as he comes in, I start facing at 12, I move up the circle. I can elongate this because of the angle that I took with my foot. I could do a finger to the eye, okay? Now my angle of delivery is enhanced by that step up the circle. It gives this more leverage, more power, and more reach. Whereas if I stayed at 6, I don't have that. I should go then, if I'm not going to move up the circle, then do a different technique, but not reversing mace. Reversing mace was to teach you to move from a better angle of opportunity. Okay, for the reasons, it could be for many. If he has a friend over there and he punches, I want to maybe move away from his friend, use him as a shield, but at the same time get my cake and eat it too. Better angle of opportunity. All right, as he moves, I move up the circle. I block again to keep it checked. I drop my weight and back knuckle to the ribs. Notice I got a knee check down here too. At this point then, I make sure that I'm still checking Kevin. If his weight is coming forward, which it should be, if he's really punching at me, go ahead, try it again. If his momentum's coming through, then I'm going to buckle the leg behind his knee. I'm going to take advantage of his weight coming through. Now I'm going to do this slow. Kevin, let me ball it again. We go 1, 2, drop, check, kick. Now when you guys kick, what I want you to do is I want you to complement the angle of the back of his leg. I don't want you kicking across or kicking up, but I want you to roll this kick in, a looping overhead roundhouse from that point there. Okay, there's a lot of power in it. If you do it too hard, you can break somebody's leg. Thank you, Kevin. Good. The next technique is called buckling branch. Now buckling branch, when we say branch, we're referring to the legs of our opponent. Now this is a good technique. This puts you behind your opponent so that you're working in what we call the dark areas of your opponent, or the obscure zones to your opponent. Or if in your case it would be zones of sanctuary, to them it would be in an obscure zone. With the help of Kevin. Good. Now Kevin's going to start in a right neutral bow. My feet are together. He's coming from 12 o'clock. Now what he's going to do, he's going to attempt to kick me with his left leg, and I'm going to move like I did on thrusting salute up the circle to 4 o'clock. And as I do, bam, I'm going to block it, and I'm going to do a right inward downward, palm up, followed by a left outward downward, palm down. It's a double block because I want to spin Kevin somewhat. I want him to turn to give me a better angle to get my strikes in. All right, now we'll do it slow. The first kick comes, the bottom hand's going to come across and catch it this way. Now this acts actually as a parry. The other one wipes it clean and allows me to turn him. Okay, it's a little more advanced, but you guys can handle it. Now, here comes the kick, right? Bam! I turn him. Now he came from 12, I'm facing basically 10 o'clock. I put my guard up and I'm going to kick him in the groin. I'm going to use the instep of my foot as I do it. I'm going to come from here, boom, kick him in the groin. I'm going to plant my foot into a right front twist stance, make sure I keep his points, pivot points, checked, and then I'm going to drop in and do a left side kick to the back of his knee, and that's going to be the buckle. I want you to plant down, I want your leg in close to his hip, and I want you to keep him checked. I don't want that arm coming up. I want his leg checked. And that's where we're going to end it up. Let's try it again, Kevin. He's 12 o'clock, I go to 4. Bam! I spin him, make my kick, and buckle that leg. Keep your eye on him, and that's where we'll take it. Thank you, Kevin. The next technique is called thrusting prongs. Now you're going to use your thumbs here, and it's a defense against a front bear hug with your arms pinned. Now with the help of Rick, how you doing, Rick? Okay, as I'm being grabbed from the front, my arms are pinned. You know, I don't have a whole lot of movement, but yet I have enough if I put it in the right place. Now, come up just a little bit, grab me again. What I want you to do is take your thumbs, and I don't want them sticking out from your hands like this because you'll break them, but you're going to jab with your thumbs to the groin. So put them against your hand, your fingers like this, both of them. You're going to step back with your right leg into a left forward bow because you're going to brace against Rick pushing on me. Lean on me a little bit, Rick, so that you've got to brace into him, okay? At the same time, take your arms and thrust to the groin. All right, that's where it gets its name, thrusting prongs. All right, now we'll try this again. Come on up to me. All right, so we go 1, boom, we hit. Now I want you to trap with the shape of the crane his left arm. You notice how my arm immediately snakes around, traps it, and hooks a little bit to control the width of Rick's body. That's what that move is there for. It keeps that from coming back at you. All right, because what I'm going to do at that point, at the same time that I trap this, I'm going to go with the knee to the groin or the lower stomach. Then I'm going to side kick the inside of his left leg, which position, bring your foot up a little bit. If we do it right, okay, we can knock him back or we can scrape down and stomp the instep of his foot. But in either case, it's going to bring the head into line with the elbow, which is going to be the last shot. The whole time, I'm going to be pinning and controlling the width of his body with this arm here. Okay, now watch it from this angle over here, Rick. Okay, he grabs and make the break. Boom, I hit, I trap. Okay, a side kick to the leg and elbow at the same time, keeping this pin and keeping this checked. All right, now I'm going to give you a little hidden move. I want you to watch what I do. Okay, stand up real straight for me on this, Rick. Okay, grab it. I break the grab. Boom. Okay, now, as this hand chambers, this one cocks. Why don't you use this one? This one fits down into the rib cage because it's a little circle, and you might as well use it because it's not really doing anything at that point. Watch again. Grab, we go 1, all right, 2, 3, and 4. Everything's there all at once. Thank you, Rick. Good. That you do it properly, like by pushing straight down. Now the way that you apply the wrist grab is take your fingers, put your middle finger behind his wrist and the other one in there. Put your thumbs on top of the first 2 knuckles and just push down. That's all you got to do. You can put all the fingers back there too, make it a little stronger, more backup mass, and push down. You can grab it with your left wrist and put your right heel palm on top and do it this way. You can use your forearm this way, your elbow. You can come in and break it this way. It's a dangerous move to be caught in. You've got to react as it's happening to you. If Brian is starting to make the move, the circle, that's when I have to move. It's too late if he gets me down this far. Okay, remember this, it's important. Thank you, Brian. Good. The next technique is called obscure sword. Now, this technique can be used one of two ways. Now, I like to teach it both ways. The way I'm going to teach it to you first is as an antidote to obscure wing. If obscure wing didn't work for you, and I'll show you how a technique can be sabotaged. Help Kevin? Now, what he's doing here, we're going to try and do obscure wing, right? All right, but what's happening is I can't reach him because Kevin is starting to push in that direction. That is the angle of greatest resistance, and if I keep going that way, it's not going to work. So rather than try to force a technique, go to an alternate. And you know something about the way the art's designed, alternates can be found before and after. What I mean is they can be found at a lower belt level or at a higher belt level. And it's a kind of profound thing in that just because you're at a higher belt level doesn't mean that it's that much more advanced. You'll see what I mean as we go along. Now, again, I try to do obscure wing, but I'm pushed. When I feel the pressure going this way, I just borrow it. That's all I want you to do is borrow that motion. Then I want you to turn. I'm in a right reverse bow, and by pulling Kevin, it cancels his width too. He puts weight on that front leg. He can't kick me at that moment. Okay, now watch again. I try to do obscure wing, but I'm pushed. At that point, I want you to pivot and chop him with a right outward hand sword to the throat. Now you notice it knocked Kevin back. As I'm pivoting into a right forward bow. It gives this reach and it gives it strength. At that point, I want a left snap kick to the groin or the inside of the knee, whatever's available. You're going to make your kick, and then back to your neutral stance. But you're borrowing force. You're not trying to fight when he's pushing to do obscure wing. You just take where he's pushing, the angle of least resistance, and use it to your favor, to your advantage. And now I pivot, keeping this checked, and drive it right into the throat. Keep the guard up. You're in a right forward bow, make your kick, and then come on out. Thank you, Kevin. Good. The next technique is called repeating mace. Now this is similar to reversing mace, but they're two different techniques, so don't get them confused. Now on repeating mace, it's taught for a number of reasons. One of which is that you're being pushed, but you're at such an angle, it's going to be hard for you to react quickly. So we're going to use a move, and we're going to use an outward parry, a very quick parry, to redirect the motion. If we do it properly, we'll find that the targets will expose themselves. Rick is going to help me on this. And what it is it's a step through, left push to the center of my body. The guy is shoving me, and this is what I'm going to run into. All right, what I want you to do, switch your leg back for me. As he shoves, so I want you to do a left outward parry. I want you just to borrow his force, let it be to your advantage, okay? As he pushes, just redirect it. Okay, push straight at me now. As he pushes, I want you to move up the circle. He's coming from 12, so I want you to move up the circle to 4 o'clock. And you're going to be in a modified neutral bow, and I say modified because as he pushes, you're going to be up on the ball of your back foot. Now, with the backhand here, we're going to move from point of origin. That means that we're going to strike the kidney with the right hand. I'm not going to cock it, but I'm going to torque my body and let the torque create power for a right middle knuckle or a right hammer fist. I prefer the middle knuckle because it digs into the kidney. As I pivot out of my stance, it's going to dig in and possibly rupture the kidney, or it could break a rib at that point. Now, if you watch when he pushes, right, bam, the parry and the strike all happen at once. All right, this came from point of origin. As that hit, it arched his back. It allowed me to track down his arm, come in with a back knuckle, and then use that roundhouse, looping overhead roundhouse kick again. Now, in close quarters, come on over here, Rick. Just feet together. In close quarters, when a push is fast and close, you have just enough time to use that outward parry. The elbow must be anchored to work for you, all right? You don't have time to use major blocks. You got to borrow that as quickly as you can, set him up, down, and kick all at once. If we do this a little slower, watch again. The parry, his body weight's coming. I unwind with the strike. I settle with the back knuckle. Keep the arm check, adjust my step if I need to, loop this overhead and back down on the knee, and then out. Okay? Thank you, Rick. Good. The next technique is called raining claw. Now, raining claw is now going to incorporate a fitted weapon to a target. Now, we've done this before, but I haven't brought it out. Now, what it is, we're going to use a left heel palm overhead claw strike. It's going to hit the bridge of the nose with the heel of the hand, and then the fingers are going to follow and rip. That gets its name, raining claw, and it's a defense for a right uppercut punch. Now, with the help of Kevin's going to start in a left neutral bow, all half feet together. Now, as the punch comes in, this is what we're dealing with, right in here to the lower stomach or even to the solar plexus. Now, I want you guys to make sure that when you step back, that you move the head back and everything back. I want your block to be almost secondary. I want you out of range of that punch. Because even if you block it, there's a chance that this can hook right up into you. And if it doesn't hit you hard, he can grab on you or something else. So make sure that you create some distance on that step. All right, let's do it again. When he comes in, we're going to do a right inward downward block, okay? I know it's a long word, it's not important, but the important thing is we're going to use frictional pull. Now that's another principle involved in Kempo, and that means that as I block his punch, I'm going to circle my arm, and it's the friction of my arm riding his arm at a high rate of speed that has a tendency to pull Kevin's head and his body towards me. It does a number of things. Number one, it brings his head in so that I can heel palm and break the bridge of the nose. And I like you to go to a right forward bow when you do it. You can do it from a neutral, but I like you to practice it both ways. Go to a forward bow and rip, all right? But the frictional pull is going to bring all that in, and it's going to cancel the width too. Punch a little faster. When that punch comes, okay, you can see that put weight up here. Do it again. And it controls that side of his body. Now, no sooner than the block hits, this hand comes up, breaks the bridge of the nose, wham, this way, and then right behind it, I want you to circle in and do an inverted fist, or what we call a vertical back knuckle. Out of your forward, you're going to go into a neutral stance, and I want you to go to the chin or the nose, but you're going to use a vertical back knuckle. Watch it from this angle. Okay, we do the first move. That brings Kevin in slightly. We break the nose. I'm in my forward bow. This bottom hand checks as I make my hit. And that's where I want you to end up. Thank you, Kevin. Good. The next technique is called crashing wings. Now, crashing wings is another favorite technique in the Kempo system, and it uses the elbows as wings. All right, now with the help of Rick. Also, what this is going to teach is use your own body as a fulcrum to flip or throw your opponent. All right, now this is a rear bear hug. The arms are free. First things first, you drop your height, drop your weight, because you don't want Rick lashing onto you and lifting you up off the ground. If you don't drop your height, the rest of the technique isn't going to work for you. So we step over to our right into a horse stance and drop our weight. Hold on to me a little tighter, Rick, so that he has to struggle for a moment to hold me up. Now, at that point, you're canceling Rick's height. When there's a certain amount of weight on your arms, there's weight on your own legs, and when your height is canceled, you can't lift up and you can't throw. All right, so what we do, the grab, we're feeling this grab being made, and we drop instantly. Now, we're going to take the elbows, we're going to go to the wrist or the forearms to break it. Okay, now, a break may not be enough, but what we're going to do is we're going to gather the right arm up. I want you to go to a left cat stance, but it's going to be transitory as you circle around behind your opponent's right leg. And I want you up thigh to thigh. I don't want a gap in here, okay? I want it thigh to thigh. At this point, you're going to pivot into a left neutral and do an outward elbow. As he fulcrums over your leg, you let him have it in the groin and let him go. Now here's where we're using our own body as a fulcrum point. Okay, and we end up into a left forward bow, and that hammer fist hit the groin. Now that's how the technique should be done, but that's go over it again. I want to show you a few more points in it. Once I've broken the grab, the reason I gather this arm up is so when I pull, it cancels the left side of his body. Without that arm, that hand could go underneath and grab the groin or pull me back or whatever. Now, as Rick is starting to fall from this hit, I know because of this strike, my fist is going to be lined up to the groin area long before it gets there, because I know the technique, and so do you. And this is how we're setting it up. We're vectoring in on a target, okay? It's a preconceived idea that we know it's going to be there because of this hit before. All right, let's grab again. He comes in, we drop our weight, break the grab, gather that arm, pull a little bit, shoot that elbow, and as he starts to fall, boom, hit the groin. Okay, you end up into a left forward bow. Okay, now I want to show you why I don't want that gap between you and your opponent when you slip around behind him. I'll show you what I mean. Now, if I grab Rick, he does his first move. Good. Now he gets around behind me, but he leaves the gap. What he does, that allows me to take over the technique. Right from there, I can use my elbow, kicks, do a whole lot of things. A lot of stuff is open to me. Come on up, Rick. If, though, I'm grabbed, I break the grab, I get around behind my opponent, and I hug this leg, try to take my leg out, Rick. It won't go because I have a bracing angle over here. But the moment I get a gap there, he can start to use that against me. All right? So we keep that in tight. Get it in close. I don't want you here, knee to knee. I want you up here, thigh to side, upper hip to the upper hip, in fact, to be exact. And it allows economy of motion. It's easy to reach the target, and it makes it very simple to move. Thank you, Rick. Good.
All right, that concludes the orange belt self-defense techniques. I enjoyed teaching them to you. Now I want you to get ready for the purple belt self-defense techniques on my next video. So practice hard, and I'll see you back again.